Is a will you marry me in your future? Or maybe you do it all over again. Hi, I'm Brian Toon with Jewelry Design Center, inviting you to come see the largest selection of Will You Marry Me in the state of Montana. The brightest diamonds of every shape and size, unique settings built to last, and skilled jewelers on site offering free sizing and maintenance for life, because that's how long we want to be your jeweler. Jewelry Design Center in Missoula, on Brooks, across from the Montana Club.
Nuanez now ESPN Radio. It's time for our ESPN Roundtable, our long-form interview for the week, and we are officially into football season. Montana State into game week almost. They have the week 0 game at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. Brent Vigen, the head coach of the Bobcats, joins us now. Coach, I know I asked you this at the Big Sky Kickoff, but now you got a couple weeks of fall camp under your belt, and the game is quickly approaching. So how's it gone for fall camp broadly, and what do you think of just being one of the few teams in the country that gets to get this thing kicked off in week 0?
Well, going reverse there, I think it's really exciting for us to be playing. I think it's one of 4 games on the 24th, and you know, you're on a bigger stage that typically we aren't, or FCS football isn't for that matter. There's a lot of FCS, FBS games, but to be, you know, really in some sense a standalone while we sit there at 2 o'clock Mountain on that Saturday. It's a pretty unique opportunity for us, and obviously we need to make the most of that. You know, playing against a Mountain West team, you know, playing in their stadium, all that goes into it will be a great test. As far as camp, you know, we are transitioning to New Mexico prep now, so our fall camp, as far as going against each other, is really in the rear view now, and I feel really good about the progress we continue to make. You know, I think our guys' intent in going about, you know, the things the right way day in and day out has been there. You can see young guys, you know, that need to continue stepping into roles, doing that, getting exposed here and there, but then responding. You know, we have a lot of old vets, obviously, that have played a lot of football, but a lot of guys with the correct mindset of going out there each day and working. So I think as it's gone, we've had a lot of back and forth. You know, any good team I've been around has that through fall camp, where it's not one side of the ball always, you know, winning over and over again, and both sides have had their moments. I think special teams wise, we, you know, continue to find, you know, our depth as far as that goes, and you know, we still need these practices in front of us, but feel a lot better about where we're at today than I would have been back in Spokane.
Was there any position battles that surprised you, the way that they kind of played out these last couple weeks?
Well, I surprised, you know, offensive line wise, I think we feel really good about our depth potential. But we've had a few guys that haven't necessarily been able to factor into that, some lingering stuff. So, you know, how that's played out over the first couple of weeks probably wasn't exactly how I would have seen it. You know, JT Reed coming back, you know, hurt his knuckle, his index finger knuckle, the second day of practice. So he'll be back, but it's been a slow go coming back for him. Cole Sane, you know, had a soft tissue injury in the middle of July. So he's just getting back. So while we know those guys are back and with us way different than they were last fall, that's been a slow go. But the emergence of Titan Fleischman and Cedric Jefferson in Burke-Mastel continues to come along. I think those things have all, you know, played out, and we'll just have to, you know, see how the process works the rest of the way to put the best 5 out there, and the position flexibility of Marcus Weir and Connor Moore provide us, you know, the opportunity to play one of those younger tackles, and it doesn't have to be just plug and play on the inside. So, you know, I think otherwise, I really like the way the linebacker group is coming. I think the backup situation there was one that was very much in question. But Cole Bullock, coming off of first year with us, has had a real good stretch here. Bryce Grebe, as a young guy, continues to come along. Neil Daly has been back in the swing of things. How we see him. Ryan Correa as a younger player from Great Falls. So that started to sort it out, because we do need to be, you know, more than just those first 2 guys, Danny and McCade.
Brent Vigen here on Nuanez now, ESPN Radio. I asked a lot of the players this during the media day, but 2 off seasons ago, a lot of talk about sort of seeing the barometer, playing the national champion and having your season end against the national champion, and how that sort of motivated them throughout last offseason. Now, this offseason, just given the heartbreak of the way you guys lost the last game, did you feel like that was a motivating factor? And if so, how do you think the guys sort of used that to stoke the fire this offseason and throughout fall camp?
Well, I think it's the season in its entirety.
Right.
The close loss in Brookings, the close loss in Moscow, the way Cat Grizz unfolded, and then the abrupt end against North Dakota State when, at that point you're like anyone else, you got as good a shot and the playoffs are in front of you and you feel good about how you played, and then the abrupt end. So I think all those things going back to January, it was very clear that last season, it just didn't all add up for us. Football is a game of inches. I mean, I know that's cliche, but you talk about the inches that were missed last year. I contributed to those losses piling up on us. So I think our guys have really been deliberate each and every day this calendar year to focus on what do we need to do that day, win that day, want to know. That's been talked about, and I think our guys have continued to live that through fall camp. It's easy to try to sit and say you're going to not look ahead, but to live it and be in that fall camp mode day after day after day, and not even look beyond the fall camp piece to New Mexico. So I think the guys did a really good job of that for the first 2 weeks, and now today was really being able, the day that we could turn the page and look at our first opponent and leave it just at that. So I think mentality-wise, our guys have taken a really good approach going back to January, and that's continued now, and it'll have to, each and every week as we take on a new opponent, a new challenge, and try to keep getting better and better through that.
One of the news briefs of the day, I guess 2 news briefs to get to from today, but first of all, you announced your captains. So Brody Grebe, Rylan Ort, Tommy Malott, Danny Ula-Kepa, Marcus Weir, and Justice Perkins, the 6 guys that are named captains. So maybe not even about each individual, but just as a group collectively. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have played a lot of football for you. It seems like the vast majority of those guys have been some of, if not the best leaders on your team for several years. I mean, especially Tommy and Brody. So it seems like they have that sort of experience being sort of the captain of a team already.
Yeah, for sure. I think all 6 of those guys, they were members of our leadership council, this past year. 3 of them were captains this past year. So they've been a part of it. They've been a piece to the leadership, whether it's been within their position group, on their side of the ball, and then now, in front of the team. And our leadership fortunately doesn't stop at those 6. We have a large group of seniors. I think there was probably another half dozen of those guys that I think would be capable of garnering that kind of respect and being named captain. We limited it to 6 though, and these guys are very deserving, and it's guys that have really poured into this program and been through quite a bit in their time. Whether they were recruited back in 18 or 19, came here in 19 or 20. They've seen a lot. They've seen a lot of change. They've seen a lot of really good examples of leaders in front of them. I do think that really matters. And they've seen this program's expectations transform through their time, and I think they know full well what they want to accomplish, how they want to leave their legacy. And I feel really strongly that they're going to do everything in their power to allow that to happen.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
And the other one I thought was really cool, I know these guys a little bit, and they're definitely some of the biggest Bobcat fans ever, but Torley's Tailgaters, they've had a tailgate for who even knows how long, since Larry Osheim's dad was going to school there, I think something like 80 years ago or something crazy. So, but they raised some money to give a couple of the guys on your team scholarships. So Brock Steele, kid out of Wyoming, and Zach Cruz, a kid out of Missoula Sentinel, both get a little help with aid. So this seems like a positive use of the NIL phenomenon. So what can you say to us about the efforts of some of those super fans of yours?
Yeah, we have a couple factions. This one in particular that approached Brandon Van Cleve, who heads up our collective. I'm sure seen examples of just this across the country. Ways to help the program, but ways to help individuals, and identifying a couple guys that ultimately will be on scholarship, but they could bridge that gap. It was their way of contributing to them, and ideally, this is a program that we can continue on beyond just this first opportunity. But yeah, and I think in the purest sense of what NIL should be all about, this is a great example. And both Zach and Brock have come here on their own accord and done a lot of dirty work in this. They were primarily special teams guys last year, and both are going to, I think, play special teams roles again, but moreover, going to be able to make an impact on defense. So, great for those guys to get an NIL award that will offset their costs, and we'll keep counting on them moving forward.
Where have you seen Zach Cruz grow, both as a player and a person? He's one of my all-time favorite guys I've covered. He's such a bright young man. He's such a great competitor. I know he went through all this stuff. We don't need to get into the past stuff, but I think it's a great story that he has sort of come back out on the other side and he's ready to contribute for you guys.
Yeah, I think in his time here, he's been who he's been, and that's a very consistent young man that achieves high, works his tail off, has big time aspirations for what he expects to be on and off the field. And from the first day he set foot, in this building and became part of our team is, been the same person every day. And I think that's what it took for him to become part of this team, to be an accountable member of this team. And, we're real thankful we have him. His role this year is going to really accelerate. I know he was an impactful special teams player, one of the top guys in that regard last season. But he's going to take on a whole new presence this year. I think he's been able to put on quite a bit of weight here from last fall, and he can be a real force. In large part just because he's got ability, but his work ethic and his competitive nature is second to none.
He's a supreme competitor, no doubt. Brent Vigen joining us here on Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio. A fun little nod of the cap for you guys with Marcus Weir landed on the Bruce Feldman's top 100 freaks list. I know it doesn't mean much besides just fun stuff to talk about in August, but I know you guys have been high on him internally since the day he broke into that starting lineup on the offensive line. So what'd you think of the nod for him, and what makes him one of these guys that people are talking about sort of in that light?
Well, it's not just looking at him on a hoof, so to speak. There's taller guys, there's heavier guys. He's strong though. So I do think he's got those type of numbers in the weight room. He is such a student of the game. I think that's the one thing that has really allowed him to go from being as a sophomore before he got hurt. He was on track, I think, to be an all conference guy that year. To last year, not that PFF means everything, but he was the top rated tackle, I think. And so I would take him over anybody. Now he's a 6'2", 6'3", whatever he is, tackle. So he maybe projects to be more of an inside player at the next level. He played some inside for us, but his intelligence, his attention to detail is superior. I from a football playing perspective, not every offensive lineman gets what that all means. And some really rely on the guy next to them to tell them what to do. And that's not Marcus. Marcus, you could pop him in there anywhere. He'd know it inside out. He probably could call plays at the same time, which not too many old linemen I think could probably be held in that regard. So we're real fortunate that we have him. We have him for another year here, as flexible as he is within that offensive line. It's great to see him step into more of a leadership role, because on top of that, he's a fierce competitor, and he's very mild mannered. At the same time, if when you meet him outside of the the playing field, I guess. But when he's on the field, he's not a guy you want to mess with.
Cash One Pawn has the most extensive inventory of any pawn shop in western Montana. Whether you're in the market for firearms, power tools, bows, video game consoles, or sunglasses, Cash One Pawn has the best deals around. And now Cash One Pawn gives you the ability to shop online from anywhere. Make CashOnePawn.com part of your shopping habits. Also make sure to download the Cash One Pawn app. Cash One Pawn, Missoula's premier pawn shop, located on Roller Coaster Road on the way to the Y. The other one I wanted to ask you on the offensive line is there's been sort of a thought, or maybe not even a thought, but a lot of teams have kind of not gone away from recruiting like true centers. They just recruit linemen, like interior linemen, and say, okay, we're going to teach a couple of these guys how to snap. You guys have not only a true center, but like one of the best true centers. So is that something you hope to continue? And how important do you think he can be, Justice Perkins, there at the center of the offensive line?
Yeah, and I've worked with several offensive linemen. You probably regard it differently. Those guys individually may be regarded differently. I know Al Johnson played center, so I think he does hold that probably closer to his heart. So I do think there's something to having that experience of snapping and blocking. I think that's not to be taken for granted. I think the guy that needs to play that position needs to be able to communicate, take charge. So there's probably got to be something, to their mentality that allows for that. Obviously, the intelligence piece, I think, in steering the ship a little bit from that position is something most offenses have within them. So yeah, I think we'd love to live in that world. I think the Justice proves that, it doesn't take a big guy to play center either, but I think that's what happens at the high school level quite a bit. The centers that play high school center are typically undersized guys. So it's a little harder to translate them. So if you're trying to take a high school guard or tackle to convert them, you're looking for some of those things I mentioned, and it doesn't always work perfectly, because that skill of being able to snap, block, and do all that is, like I said, not something you should take for granted.
Brent Vigen joining us here on the ESPN Roundtable, probably presented by Paradise Falls, our long-form interview for the week. I'm sure one of the questions you get from fans and followers all the time is, what are your receivers looking like? How are they going to be able to contribute in the pass game? You guys have run the ball so effectively. You've had some times where you've thrown it really efficiently as well. But it seems to me like you got a bunch of talent there, and it seems like that position group could take a huge step forward. If so, why?
Well, I think just first off, I think it's an intentional effort to become more balanced. It's not that we haven't had guys. I think the way the last couple seasons have played out, we've gotten to be pretty lopsided. At the same time, we've scored points, we've put up yards, but ultimately, I think it stood out. I think in the 4 losses, probably in particular last year, at least 3 of them, we didn't throw the ball real well. We didn't throw the ball well in big moments. I suppose the saving grace was we probably threw the ball the best. Tommy certainly did against NDSU in the playoff game. So something to build off of. I think there's an intentional piece that has been part of our plan, all calendar year. I think the return of Taco Dollar to full form has been very noticeable this fall. I think Ty McCullough, proved that he can be a real weapon. Junior Alexander's been waiting in the wings to be cleared, and he's got tremendous ability, and he's a guy that can play in a bunch of different spots, can win the 50-50 ball, has a real good feel. So obviously we add him to the playing side of things this year. We brought in Ryan King, a transfer from East Carolina, who had also been at Georgia Tech this summer in July, and I think Ryan's shown some good things. We got another King, Javante King, who's a redshirt freshman, but a 6'4", really talented young man out of Blackfoot, Idaho. That is something we probably haven't had the last couple of years, just with his size and ability. Jacob Trimble will factor in there. He was, I think, productive as a true freshman at times last year. So the depth is there. I think the versatility with that group, the flexibility to some degree with that group, I think should provide us an opportunity to win more one-on-ones, and we got to be able to go after it and make those plays. And, it's twofold. Like it's a mindset. We need to throw it better, but then it's ultimately the guys being able to throw it and to catch it. And, to this point in camp on top of spring ball, feel good about the progress we've made.
And having a variety of different, well, I guess a couple at least options at quarterback the last couple of years has certainly served you guys well. But talking to Tommy, he was talking about, okay, if he got to play a game from stem to stern, like he did against North Dakota State, just being able to get kind of more comfortable as the game goes along and your reads, your progressions, is that a part of his growth? And have you seen that part of his game grow? And do you feel like he has a better opportunity to sort of absorb things now that he is kind of the standalone starter?
Yeah, it's interesting. How that all came about in 22 was really bringing Sean in as a really good football player, a backup. I know our run game, our running back room kind of went sideways with the health, and it just was apparent that we needed to play both those guys, and it became a little bit of a monster onto itself. And then, you look at the 2 years, 26 games, I suppose, right? And the number of games they both played, those are the games you probably would really dissect in that regard as far as what that meant to flow. And I do think there is something to that. I think there's also something I hope to Tommy's continued maturation and his understanding of preservation that, he is the guy. There isn't the option that Sean could come in there and probably, in many ways do a lot of the same things and do it as effectively. So, I just think his continued emergence and even understanding what game flow means, I think is something that, obviously I think he'll be experiencing in its truest form for the first time. Because he certainly didn't as a freshman, and then these last 2 years that's been complicated. So I think he's just continued more and more to develop from this really good athlete, football player, super intelligent guy into a quarterback and what all that means. And, it's certainly our hope that the best is yet to come. And there's no reason for us not to believe that. And, we need to put him in as many situations to, I've said it, just make ordinary plays as much as possible. He's going to make some extraordinary, but, the 5-yard completion and the value of that, and the underneath completion that then the receiver can run for 5 yards. I mean, and just we need more of those plays within the grand scheme of things in our offense. And I do think that has showed up here in fall camp.
Helping sort of emphasize that preservation part of things, but also not corralling him too much. Cause I mean, what makes him so brilliant is his creativity and his improvisation and all that. How do you sort of balance those?
Well, I think the one thing we can continue to emphasize is you are going to get out of pocket. Those are probably the plays more than even some of the design runs that create the chaos. And as much when that happens to, for him to train himself to run away from as many guys as possible, get as many yards as possible, but find himself maybe, stepping out of bounds. I can still think of a couple plays last year. He's still turning it back up inside on a big time scramble and like just run out of bounds. Those extra 3-4 yards aren't super valuable. And then I think when it does come to design runs, just the way we utilize him, certainly make it more about his speed than his power. But there's going to be, I'm sure, plenty of times this year where his legs are going to have to make plays, and on the other side, however that play finishes, we just got to, be as smart as possible.
Our family on our mom's side has a deep Montana history, especially stemming from Butte and Helena. We are so proud. One of the things we are most proud of is to call ourselves Montanans. At Up Top Clothing, they have Montana-made and Montana-branded clothing for both men and women. Their Montana Till I Die collection is one of my favorite collections anywhere in the clothing world. And you can shop online and get the Montana Till I Die collection and all the other great gear that Up Top Clothing makes delivered right to your doorstep. Visit teamuptop.com, and if you use the promo code Skyline15, you're going to get a discount on all your online ordering. Teamuptop.com, Up Top Clothing, reminding you to take a step back and enjoy them.
Brent Vigen here on Nuanez now, ESPN Radio. Talking about the defense, I'm assuming that the defensive line will be a strength and probably pretty deep again because you guys have so many guys back. You mentioned the linebackers and the way that they're sort of cultivating depth. I'm really interested in your secondary, though. I think you have some really good players at safety for sure. And I think you have some guys that could be really good players at corner, but there's a lot of them. So how has the corner rotation sort of sorted itself out these last couple of weeks?
Yeah, the guys we ultimately went with last year, Simeon Woodard, who was going to be a 4-year guy for us, John Johnson, who really had a good year as a first-year junior college transfer, then Andrew Powder, a true freshman last year. Those 3 guys, I think will continue to be our mainstays. Takari Carr is a young man who's 3rd year in the program, a redshirt sophomore, but he's continued to come along. In a point now, I think him going out in the field is something that we're closer to. Of those true freshmen this year, we brought a lot of speed in. Jace McMillan, a young man out of Katy, Texas, has I really think really demonstrated a ability, but then a maturity to be able to step in there. So those 5 guys right now would be in the mix. Whether we're playing 3 or 4 or potentially 5, I think that remains to be seen. But I think those top 3 in particular have all taken their games to another level from where they were last year. And, we're going to lean on them very heavily to do more and more this year within our scheme.
At that free safety spot, Drew Powdell, was such a great player when he was healthy last year. So how much can he unlock things for you on that back end?
Yeah, he'll be out early for us. Still recovering from injury in the spring. But ultimately when he gets back, I think his availability last year when it was there he was really good, but he wasn't available as much as we needed. And he is a physical player, and I think that physicality, was it's football, and things happen when you're physical. So, he can take another step forward. I have no doubts in that. I know Blake Stillwell ended up getting some real valuable experience in his first year as a junior college transfer to us. And then the other guy that's seeing some time there right now, just given our situation with Drew, is Caden Dowler. Caden played nickel split time with Lavelle Price at the beginning of the season. Obviously, he went down after that South Dakota State game. So, I think Caden more than anybody else would potentially slide back there and really feel good about the camp that he's had. He's about 11 months removed, I suppose, from surgery, and he didn't go through spring ball, but really attacked his rehab. And he's just talk about defensive players who have taken a step. He would be at the top of that list.
Last thing for you then, now that you are kind of turning the page into game week, how do you hope the mindset of just the collective roster changes, and what do you guys hope to get done between now and when you're in Albuquerque in a little bit more than a week?
Well, I think the first thing you transition to going against scout team. I think the first couple of days, that's always a little bit of a challenge. You've been going good on good. The ones have been going against the ones. So we've introduced that Monday and Tuesday to some degree. So now starting tomorrow, we'll be more in that mode. So just making sure the intensity of practice and those reps, and how dialed in those scouts are to what we're asking them to do to replicate New Mexico is there. But I think our guys are really, really hungry to get this opportunity. You spoke to the abrupt nature of our season ending last year. The first thing you think of, is you want to get back out there, and that just takes a long time, and we're 9 months or whatever, maybe not quite 9 months removed from that. And, I think that's that opportunity that's going to be in front of these guys, is a chance to go out there and do what they love, to play this game, play it for one another, and see where we're at against a, Mountain West program on national TV. It should be a lot of fun.
Brent Vigen here on Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio. Coach, we appreciate it, and we'll see you next week. But best of luck with the rest of camp here, and best of luck with game week.
All right, thanks, Colter. Go Cats.